you kind of grow up amongst people who become what they see. That's the
Yeah.
way I always thought of it. It's like everybody I grew up with became like it, mostly teachers and police officers and firemen, and that's what they strive towards because that's what they saw. And I was like
Wow.
hoping, praying that there's something more than what I can see in the world. Yeah, I was trying so hard to prove myself, I think.
Yes. Yes.
And maybe the wrong, sometimes when you have that and then you have the combination of entrepreneurship or
Yeah.
like the
Mhm.
urge to do your own thing, then what happens is you end up looking. Sometimes I even regret like I changed the name of the entity instead of instead of starting a new one, and I kind of regret that sometimes because I'm like, it was so different, and sometimes people have this the wrong impression about what we were in the early days. But
Hi, everybody. Today I have a really special guest. Avery is a friend of mine, and we started, I think, our journey in Estonia more or less at the same time, I would say. If not, did you
I
come
think
in
so.
earlier than
It took
2017?
no, I think I arrived 2018.
Oh, man. Okay, cool.
I
Okay.
think so. Yeah.
Okay.
You
So
as well, right?
you've gone a really, really long way. And honestly, I am so, so proud of you, man. Seriously. We're gonna get into the little, startup competition that we were a part of as well. That's where we met. But first off, I
Well, you
really have to.
crushed me. You crushed my dreams. You made
Let's
me
not.
feel you made me feel inferior as a human being, and you continue to do so. If
Oh
you
man, why?
everything you do is so impressive.
No, come on, come on. But let's start
And
off with Modash. You are the creator and founder of a creator-based platform. I think honestly, there were many people when I heard about creator economy, right? I didn't have anybody working on a platform that was so relevant to it, at least in my second degree of connections. But when you started Modash, I think that's where I started seeing more of a lot of brands jumping into this, because influencer marketing, a lot of brands are now talking about this. There's a lot of, I think, myths around this as to how it should be done. Regarding the perspective of influencer, how to get the brand deals that they require, and also from the perspective of a brand who are seeking
Mhm.
those partnerships. And then Modash, so sort of just sits right in the middle, connecting both dots. And I think it's an amazing platform that you built. And congrats on the 2
Yes.
mil as well. You recently got a round of funding, and I'm so, so happy for you and the team. Honestly, it is amazing. So
Thank you
good
so
job,
much.
good job. But maybe we can start off with you and how we met as well. Talent Starter Week was this competition that we were a part of in our university, right? You were studying at that time. I was studying at that time. I was doing a crazy little marketing degree, and then you were in the entrepreneurship space already. So maybe we can get into that. So how was your journey from Canada to Estonia? And also, I mean, the weather wasn't that different, I'd say, but
Believe it or not, it's actually worse here.
gee.
It's darker. Yeah, that's the depressing
Oh, yeah,
part.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
so I grew up in the east coast of Canada, all the way to the for those who get their east and west confused, that's all the way to the right side. And then once you start swimming, you stop, and that's where I live.
Got it.
Um, so so yeah, Nova Scotia.
Mhm.
Moved around quite a lot as a kid, but mostly really small towns, like a couple thousand people kind of thing.
Wow.
Nothing.
Hmm.
Yeah, so really small towns, and wanted for something more. I didn't really know what it was, but I was just a bit frustrated with. I think probably a lot of people will relate to the idea that you kind of grow up amongst people who become what they see. That's the way I
Yeah.
always thought of it. It's like
Hmm.
everybody I grew up with became like it, mostly teachers and police officers and firemen, and that's what they strive towards because that's what they saw. And I was like
Wow.
hoping, praying that there's something more than what I can see in the world. And so yeah, I moved to Germany. I think it was
Hmm.
17-ish, something like that. And um, yeah, I was climbing pretty seriously at the time, so I spent most of the time climbing rocks in
Oh, that's so
like
cool. Okay.
Switzerland. Yeah, and
Hey.
chopping vegetables in an Irish pub, and yeah, being a bum basically, sleeping on
Wow.
in tents, and well, not often in tents, but whenever we were climbing. So
Of
um,
course.
yeah.
Wow. And look at you now, huh?
I think your impression of me is much higher than the
No,
reality.
no, no, come on. I feel like, no, seriously, knowing you, you've changed a lot, definitely changed a lot. I think from the time we met and now, I feel like you've grown so much, honestly, as a person, someone that I know in the professional space. And I feel so happy, like genuinely, to see that growth. Not just as someone who is the creator behind this whole thing, but also as a person, man. You're like more humble and more like, really, I love that so much. I love that. I love that. Like you've
I think
genuinely
at the
solid.
I think at the time that we met, I was really trying to.
You were in your hustler zone, like full on hustler zone. I remember.
I
Sure, 100%.
was, yeah, I was trying so hard to prove myself, I think,
Yes. Yeah.
and maybe to the wrong people a lot of the time. So,
Mhm.
like, more to, um, yeah, I think when you start, especially if you're kind of, I mean, I've always been like this obsessive person who needs to be the best
Yeah.
at the thing they do. Even now, I think it's like, it's still a part of me, and that's okay. But, um, sometimes when you have that and then you have the combination of entrepreneurship or
Yeah.
like the
Mhm.
urge to do your own thing, then what happens is you end up looking for validation. I don't know if that's the cause or the effect, like if somehow hunting for validation
Yeah.
is what brought me here, or
Oh.
if
Mhm.
being here is what I see. Tons of founders get stuck in the validation loop.
Very
It's
true.
like
Very true. Yeah.
you, yeah, you attend the pitch competitions, and you go to the conferences, and you try to raise money, and you go to an accelerator, and you get
Yeah.
media, press, and PR, and then you go bankrupt, and that's like the circle. And so I think I saw that in myself really early, like I was lucky
Mm.
to be like, hey, this is probably what I luckily I was okay at those things. Like I could pitch pretty good. So we won a couple of those competitions and whatever.
Yep.
And I
I
was like,
remember that. Yeah.
and I was like, wait a second. This isn't like doing anything for the world or for like really anything for
Yeah.
anyone
Yeah.
ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
But
honestly,
anyhow,
I think it is sort of a little bit of an eye-opening experience as well at the same time, because when people are starting off, right, hackathons are probably the first places where most of the people
mm,
sort of get that avenue, to connect with like-minded people, to start creating, their ideas, envisioning everything that they have in their head and bringing it down to, a table with other people, and then eventually like creating something out of
yeah,
it as well. But then it does really like make you question at the end of the day, like you said, like is this even
yeah.
taking me somewhere? So
Now
yeah,
what?
yeah.
Yeah.
But it
Oh,
definitely comes down to you being persistent and being relentless and then going for it on your own, because yes, the startup competitions will come and go. The jury will definitely give one prize today to you, the next day to someone else. So you're a part of the puzzle basically, but it's you who needs to eventually work on whatever you believe in and then create something out of it, which you've done really well, so good job on that.
well, thank you. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
yeah, it's been a long journey of lots of
sure.
failing.
Like maybe we can get more into how has your journey been, like in your eyes, from let's say how has it evolved you as a person, Modash then, Modash now, because I mean it's been a couple of years already, so how's it been going so far and what have you learned?
Yeah, so the Modash journey, maybe I'll try to. Yeah, I think so in I came to Estonia and went to uni, went
Mhm.
to the world renowned SD minor. That's all we'll say about that. Um, and I think I was there, after that program was basically all I did, and then I left
Mhm.
that one class that we did.
Yeah.
And so that was like some kind of long hackathon-y type thing where you for the viewer's sake, you make one pager about your idea, and you like teams kind of come together from these
Yep.
students, and um, yeah, and then most people kind of try to get some validation in order to pitch
Mhm.
well for the competition and maybe make some mock-ups and designs and stuff. And I was like, I was immediately obsessed. I was like, I
Mhm.
have to. So we had even I think revenue going into the demo day. And basically what the idea was at that point was like something like the record label model from the music industry applied to creators. That was kind of the idea at the
Okay.
time. and so the idea was we were going to be like the agents for the creators, and then facilitate these partnerships in between. Yeah, and did all kinds of weird stuff based on that. So like it was kind of cool. We were part of this elevator startups thing at the time. The project at the time was called Makery, and we were part of this elevator startups thing. So we had an office, which was pretty cool. And again, it was great, like kind of superficial validation, and it made me feel good.
Yeah.
So we had creators around all the time, like some amateur photographers who happen to have some Instagram followers. I think like one of Estonia's top model type thing.
Yeah.
She was around. There was one actress who was quite popular, and
Mm-hmm.
one rapper guy, and we basically put them together
Nice.
and would do photo shoots and kind of facilitate relationships. And I had no clue I was going to make money off of this, but it was pretty fun. And then occasionally I was running these influencer partnerships. So one of those few, for example, like I think the very first one was with Brewdog,
Wow.
and yeah, and she got to go to Brewdog and take photos and have like free dinner with her friends, and I think make a couple $100. And it was so then I met Hendry around that time, and Hendry's my co-founder, the guy
Yeah.
who actually builds things, the important dude. And then I started doing more of the partnerships, and Hendry was kind of tinkering with like what could we automate in this process. Funny thing that I did then, kind of coming back to the validation point, is like if you had a pulse, you were on the team. That was the
Wow. Oh God, Avery.
it was
Oh
like,
man, I would have loved to see the hiring process.
dude, it was like there was no process. It was just you're hired. I think no one was earning any money because there was no idea. It was just like
Yeah.
scrambling in
Yes.
circles and like having fun dinners and stuff afterwards. Um, just goofing around basically. But I think at that there was like 15 random uni students, and like
Yeah.
yeah, like it's like, oh, I'm a violinist. Oh, I like to read books. It's like, okay, we'll find something for you to do. It was
Oh my God.
chaos. It
No,
was
but I
mad.
love that. I love that. And I think the team now that you have, obviously, has grown with you so much. Because now, I mean, of course, back then it was probably like a few people that you hired, and you just started creating, Modash at that time, which is very different from what it looks now. But then the way that you've built, and also the brands that you're working with now, I mean, of course, it's a really big deal. So which means, of course, there's a lot more seriousness in the processes, and a lot more
Oh yeah.
required than just a pulse, of course.
Now the team is like, how are we supposed to hire people if you're telling us to just like reject basically every candidate? So it's pretty
Yeah,
much
exactly. So there's a lot
polar.
more scrutiny as well, on who aligns with the brand and the culture within Modash. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I think people also underestimate how exceptional human beings can be. This is like very, um, like, uh, I think the positive way to look at this is like the, yeah, the positive way to look at that. Sometimes people also have a very bad idea of average, but I think it's like a less
Mhm.
fun thing to talk about. But like exceptional people are truly exceptional, and it's really hard to find a ceiling. And as a startup founder, you're supposed to hire the best possible people. And
Mhm.
so at some point, Henry and I were just like, hey, let's see what happens if we like double the quality that we hire. Let's see if it's physically possible. And we had one or two people. It's like, oh, maybe we can
Right.
push a little harder. And yeah, so the hiring process is super important. Anyway,
Of course.
just to get through the whole story so you can pick it
Mhm.
apart.
Yeah.
We had three co-founders at the time. Like yeah, three people in the cap table. We're in this thing. We're running these like random circles, and
Mhm.
then I did a couple I was running a podcast at the time too. That's an
Yeah,
important
that's
detail.
true. Yep.
And it was like it was successful in the sense that I could pay my rent from the podcast, which was pretty
Mhm.
cool. And it was really fun because we did live shows, and so
Yeah, of
then I get to talk to people I really and learned a lot from.
course.
And so I guess you came to one or two of those things,
I
eh?
did, I did, I did.
Okay.
And I feel like that's what you bring to the table as well, like even before Modash, if there's one thing that I think you have definitely carried forward is you're really good at connecting with people, you know, like
Hmm.
connecting two people together as well as you yourself connecting with people themselves. And I think
Thank
eventually that is what you sort of brought to Modash as well, right? In terms of connections, you know, connecting brands with influencers, influencers with brands, and being like the party in the middle. You know, that's
I think
also,
I really love to see people winning. It's like so much fun for
I
me. I
love
love.
that. I love that. I love that.
And when it's like,
I love that.
especially when it's like you're like the evil mastermind in the background, you can be like, hey, maybe you should talk to this person
Yeah,
for
yeah.
lunch. Probably. And then secretly, like this person has the set of skills that this person needs. And then they go have lunch. And it's like, you know what? Funny enough, we're gonna end up working together. And I'm like,
I love that.
wow. And it feels so good, you know? Uh,
You're like, I did not expect that.
yeah. So it's
Oh, wow.
I like that kind of, I don't know. I
Mhm.
like to see other people winning. And so maybe that, but I really appreciate that. I mean, that's really kind of you to say. I think, uh, yeah, and then getting really to the inception of
Yeah.
Modash then. So running the podcast, we have sponsorships. They're few thousand euros each, which to me was
Mhm.
crazy. Um, Talking to tons of entrepreneurs and really like getting the itch to do something even bigger. And so, uh, yeah, it was interesting because I got to see the creator side from
Mhm.
that point of view, or at least the part where I wasn't grinding out YouTube videos every day, or like the kind of
Yeah.
I wasn't true hardcore like YouTuber or anything, but I got to see what it was to interact with brands and have those conversations and how kind of like that mindset worked. And then for example, I was running campaigns. So a good example is when Bolt launched in Portugal, which was kind of like when they really started, I think,
Yeah.
like hockey stick growth.
Mhm.
I ran the influencer partnerships in Portugal for Bolt's launch.
Nice. Okay.
So I was like finding the people and communicating with them and doing the whole flow.
Wow.
And and that was super interesting because Bolt is like if you're an early stage startup founder and you can work with Bolt, those guys are
Exactly.
hard. And they're
Mhm.
like the mentality and the quality of feedback is really high because they do not care. Like they don't need you to feel good about yourself. They
Exactly.
need to
Yeah.
grow
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
And so that's really important, that kind of feedback. And so shout out to well, at that time actually there was no influencer people there. It was only Pavel and Carola, like
Mhm.
the OG growth people at Bolt. And
Yeah.
I went to Pavel and I'm like, I'm in the HQ and I'm sweating because I had kind of written to them that I have this idea to do some influencer stuff for
Yeah.
them. And I go in there and I'm kind of sweating and I'm like scared. The office is huge and beautiful. And I'm like, what am I
Of course.
doing here? I can't find the place. And I sit down and I'm like, Pavel, I want 10,000 euros. And he's like, how about three? It was like, deal. And
Oh
so,
my God.
um,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah,
Wait,
yeah,
and Bolt
no.
was the biggest brand that you at that time was the first biggest brand that you worked with, right? In that
Yeah,
segment.
basically, yeah. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
and locally, I mean, you
Yes.
know
Yes.
how
Yes.
they are now, but at
Yeah.
that time they were even kind of more interesting because everybody was looking to see like what can this become kind of, and everyone's talking about Martin and Marcus. That was around the time they also won the EY
Yeah.
Entrepreneur
Yeah.
Visa.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they
That
were
was a
like
really big deal.
I ran that campaign, learned a lot, did the reporting cycle as well, and
Mhm.
also kind of got to immediately face their scrutiny of like where are the numbers?
Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
this?
Mm-hmm.
So that was really good. And so now I have this like 360 view of running the partnerships, being the creator, communicating with them, understanding like what makes them happy,
Amazing.
um, the reporting cycle. So I got to see the whole thing really thoroughly. And also I'd interacted with lots of creators already and was
Mm-hmm.
always kind of obsessed with the space. Um, yeah. And then from there, I would say that's when we really started to build the right things. So
Lot of sense. Yeah.
I'm definitely messing up the timeline, but at some point, basically what happens is um, we've built this super. So from there, or no,
Mhm.
we're still building the wrong things at this point. Forgive me. So we're still building terrible, terrible product. It's like it's way too big. It's huge. It has messaging and tries to have payments, and it has like
Right.
these like manual bits we as the team have to
Mhm.
do, and all this chaos. I had raised 75,000 euros from angels, so that's what
Okay.
was paying really small salaries.
Hmm.
Uh, Most of the team from the uni days had already left, so there's maybe 7 or 8 of us.
Wow. And
Six,
how
because
big is
yeah,
the team now?
well, now we're 24,
Wow.
or 25, something like that.
Amazing.
And yeah, and so we built the wrong thing forever. We realized it's not going to work for lots of different reasons. And one of the hardest decisions was like, we delete 80% of the code base. We ask one co-founder to leave, and we start from scratch basically. And we had revenues. That was
Wow.
the hard part. It was like the founders could have made decent money, like a
Mhm.
decent chunk of money, but it just wasn't going to be as big as we wanted it to be, and it wasn't going to fulfill the mission we wanted to fulfill. And so that's probably a good place to stop the rambling. But so at that point, we're at like middle 2019,
Yes.
and we've started basically from zero. We delete literally almost all of the code that's been written.
Oh my
Another person left the team as well, so the team
God.
is very small. We cut the office because we're basically out of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
money.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so but I have a very clear vision of what will work at this point.
That's really
Um,
good. Yeah. And of
but
course, I think it does come with a lot of setbacks, right? In terms
yeah,
of pivoting and what needs to be done at what time and what do you need in terms of fulfilling the client's requests. And that's how products grow, services as well, because you get to learn more from your clients than, what the vision that you have in your head. So customer feedback at the end of the day is the most important thing, which is really good that you started taking that into consideration in the very early on days of Modash, which makes sense.
yeah, and I think like ruthlessly taking it
Mhm.
into like
Yeah.
really trying to square like what customers are telling me, what I understand about them that they might not understand about themselves, and then what I think the space needs.
Hmm.
And so that's why Bolt was so important,
Yep.
because there wasn't much that I understood about them that they didn't understand about themselves. They knew exactly what they needed, and they were pretty much right.
But no, like
But
coming to COVID then, because if you said this was 2019, right, where you started figuring out the right path for Modash, I'm just trying to figure out because let's say 2019 is where also COVID happened, and that is where we saw pretty much a really big boom of creator economy.
mhm,
People started moving more towards, let's say, platforms like TikTok. There was a lot of like, I think there was a big shift, man, in terms of content and consumption
yeah,
and creation. So how did that affect or impact a platform like yours, Modash?
yeah.
What if it did?
So yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, 2019 we raised some money from Iceberg. It was 120,000. It was on the same. So basically our whole pre-seed round was like 200,000 in
Right.
two chunks.
Hmm.
And um yeah, COVID I guess hit maybe 6 months after that. I think it was beginning 2020, right? When lockdown started and
Yeah, yeah,
things like
yeah,
that.
yeah. Yes.
At least here we got it a little later than others, I think. Um yeah, it was an interesting time. I mean, to a deg I think it was probably good for us. There was lots of things that weren't good, like
Hmm.
all kinds of budgets were frozen. I remember I was I was living in where was I living? I was still living in the office, I think. I
Hmm.
was living in the office, and we had this big customer who was going to make it possible for us to like pay rent. Like I was going to be able to pay rent after this customer,
Yeah.
and we get all the way through the deal cycle. They're super happy. Everything's good. And then I'm literally going to view the apartment that I'm saying, hey, yeah, we're gonna take this. I'm gonna take this.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm at the gym and I see my email on the thing. And it's all budgets are frozen. We can't move forward.
Oh
And
my God.
so it was like a huge punch in the face. And then I had to go look at this apartment with my girlfriend, knowing
Yeah.
that I had to say I can't afford this, like afterwards. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that was a pretty brutal moment, to be honest, because like you said, we've been grinding, trying to figure out what to do for a while, and something was finally working, and then COVID slapped us. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, but we kept going, and the good news is that all that pivoting and that like hardcore, let's cut everything and start from zero, that was the right move.
Mhm.
More from social media space, like more, everybody was there and everybody was looking at social. So I think the brand started to move more budgets there. More people got interested in the idea of partnering with creators and that kind of thing. And so yeah, the everything, like there was no, to be honest, there was no like rocket ship level momentum. It didn't feel
Mhm.
that way, at least for us. Maybe we were too early. Um, but all of the work we had done, maybe we had some like at least accelerated validation or something, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
makes sense. Cool. But in terms of like, okay, I really need to understand because now when we see a lot of brands jumping into, influencer marketing, there is a lot of misconception around how to do it right.
Yeah.
So in terms of a platform that does it right now, I really want to understand like what is your advice for brands seeking such partnerships and also for influencers seeking these partnerships?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing is to say like not what not to do. So when you're, if you're anything but a consumer like company, don't do influencer marketing. If you're a startup that's trying to figure out its first or second acquisition channel, probably don't do influencer marketing.
Mhm.
Um, and then once you have some traction, you have a channel that works, you understand that customers can like sign up and buy successfully, your user experience is good. This goes for e-commerce stores and
Yeah.
stuff as well,
Yep.
by the way. It's shocking how many customers like come to Modash, buy the product, spend 10,000 euros on influencer marketing, get tons of traffic and don't understand why people aren't buying, and then their payment gateway doesn't work. It's like physically impossible to buy from your store on mobile. So
Yeah.
making sure the whole flow works well, then you're ready to do creator partnerships. And I think like really in a few words, you want to partner with people who reach your target audience most efficiently,
Mhm.
at a reasonable compensation level, which means at a compensation level that makes sense for you. It's the maximum you can pay to the creator in order to
Mhm.
efficiently sell the product. So
Okay.
it's not like what the creator asks for. It's not like what you wish you could pay. It's the
Mhm.
maximum you can pay with your customer acquisition costs still working. Like for from like
Yep. Yep.
business.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's super, yeah. And then long-term relationships that compound over time,
Yeah.
optimize and help your creators do better over time. So when you have long-term relationships, especially you have a good incentive model, like maybe people use my promo code and I get paid
Yeah.
€5 or whatever
Mhm.
per check, then when you have long-term relationships and they're incentivized properly, it's really magic because you're a small marketing team. If you can recruit like 2 influencers a week, you've got 100 people publishing for you
Yeah.
at the end of the year, and all that work is already done. Some of them are going to churn out, and you can kind of optimize for that rate as well. Um, but uh, but yeah, so long-term relationships, good incentives model is super important from like a optimization. It's
Mhm.
just super easy. You don't learn very quickly if you have or you can't really learn if you don't complete the feedback loop if the creator just posts once and then you never talk to them again.
That's true.
So
That's true.
having those long-term relationships in a good incentives model shows
Mhm.
you like, hey, this person is performing more every month. That's
Mhm.
counterintuitive. You can dig into that more, or like yeah, you learn much better when you have longer term relationships. And I've seen that this seems to be like a repeat in every majorly successful company. Like every company that's excited to be hiring
Yeah.
10, 15 influencer
Mhm.
managers and invest like $10 million next year, or additionally, all of those guys have some function that's long term. Maybe they have celebrities that are just like, in a commercial once or do a thing once, but
Yeah.
most of their things.
But also, like, if I can ask, like, what do you think are the upcoming trends of creator economy? Like, where is it
Um,
going?
That's an interesting question. The upcoming trends. So there's a whole bunch of weird things in the space that
Yeah.
will go one way or another.
Mhm.
I think, but a big like obvious one is the professionalization of creators in Europe and North America. So
Right.
currently in Europe, especially, we're in the place where somebody said it once to me. It made so much sense. It was like, creators are in a place where in Europe right now where they can make 10,000 euros to go to post an Instagram story, or they can go to the pub with their friends. They might choose going to the pub with their friends. Like,
Right.
uh, they're
Yeah.
just they don't know how to make an invoice. They're not sure what data goes on an invoice. They fear for the whole partnership cycle. Like,
Mhm.
can I trust my manager? Can I trust the brand? When do I get paid? They said I'd get paid in 30 days. Well, actually, you sent the invoice 15 days after that. So it's like 45 days. Like these little professionalization aspects are going to change it drastically, because once the creators think of themselves more like business people, or there's infrastructure that's abstracts away a lot of the business
Yeah,
logic for them, then it'll change like everything about how they run their business. Like it won't just be YouTube videos
yeah,
and
makes
posts.
sense.
We'll see more and more super sophisticated stuff like Beast Burger, or like
Mhm.
kind of that's like the extreme version
Yeah,
everybody
yeah, yeah,
knows.
of course.
Uh,
Cool. Okay, nice. We're also short on time, but since it's 9 a.m., I really want to understand like what does a normal day in your life as a CEO of Modash look like? Go.
a normal day.
Yeah.
So my weeks are kind of thematic, I would say. So
Hmm.
um this right now, it's a lot about what I'm trying to do and improve on inside the team, is to better communicate a long-term vision, and so that everybody understands the importance of urgency.
Yeah.
Because when you have like, we'll have the entire year mapped out, and we'll map it out in such a way where um everybody understands that if I don't do my job today to the best of
Mhm.
my ability, we're gonna be a day behind, and then nothing, everything falls apart. Should kind of be the instinctual response to
Yeah.
being slow inside of a startup. So right now that means like uh, sharing my vision with kind of the people who are chiefly responsible for setting and hitting goals, and then reflecting on their goals with them to understand like um, does everything line up with all of the theses of the company, reading
Yep.
through those docs, making edits, having conversations that map the entire product roadmap for next year, understanding like the scope of those things and what's critical, what might interrupt the roadmap.
Hmm.
um, right now, so a day in the life is a lot about like reading and talking through those plans, making sure they align also with like actual numbers.
Of
Will
course.
this Is this enough expansion? Do we need like to increase retention more, or what's the um yeah, and then the balancing act there. So right now it's like that. Some weeks it's very much um hey, we need to hire these 3 people, so I'm doing 30 intro calls in a week.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so it can change a lot.
Mhm.
Always, though, I think the breakdown is something roughly like uh 30% talking to customers, 30% spending time with the team, and then the remainder kind of
Mhm.
whatever is urgent and important.
Makes a lot of sense. Cool. Nice. So, what is your advice? This is my last question. What is your advice for someone who, let's say, wants to get into the creator space?
Making stuff is a really good idea. Like I love what you're doing with this show. I think it's so cool. I think it's gonna like I think if you stay consistent with this, no matter what your thought is about what will become possible, you will exceed that. You will be really surprised what opportunities open up over time. That was my impression when I did the show as well. I was like, I don't deserve these opportunities. It makes no sense to me, which is why I wanted to do it at scale. I was like, I want everybody to feel like they have so much opportunity that it doesn't even make sense to them. And so I think you'll get there as well. The Yeah, but yeah,
Mhm.
make something you enjoy and that other people like to see. Um, and then from more like the startup side, I guess we're probably gonna have to pop back in here, but
Yeah,
from the startup side, I think join a really legit creator economy company. Maybe I can ramble a bit about what that is.
sure.
We can
Let's
send
join
it a
back.
link.
Let's join back. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool.
Yeah, so join a really legit creator economy company. That it depends on what your goals are. Obviously, if you want to make stuff, then you have to be making stuff. And I think pretty much everybody should be doing something. Even if it's just getting into the habit of writing a LinkedIn post here or there, or sharing
Mhm.
your thoughts on Twitter, as long as they're not too like twittery.
Yeah.
But um yeah, so making something is really important. Podcasts are also a great choice. And so kind of if you have a good friend that you like having conversations with, then podcasts can also be really low um overhead, in the sense that you just have to sit down with a
Yeah.
mic and try to have like coherent topics consistently. So that's really cool. But on joining creator economy space, I think it's a really difficult space to understand for unintuitive
Yeah.
reasons, like the way that the GMV flows in the space, like the way that money moves in the space and how consolidated it is at the top,
Yep.
um, and how many flashy, shiny objects are everywhere. No offense to NFTs or anything, but like there's always something shiny in the creator space, and so it's
That's
really
true.
hard to
Yeah.
stay to the course of like
Mhm.
we need creators to be professionals or abstract away the professionalism in a meaningful way. If you're trying to build software, that means you can't sell services. So if you join a startup and they're like, hey, we're funding our revenue with like selling time,
Yeah.
they'll never escape that. Just assume they'll never escape. You're much better off. Um, uh, yeah, and so really trying to understand the fundamentals of the business, what's the thesis, and then how does that work? And listen to a lot of Colin and Samir, maybe that'll help you too. I don't know if you know those guys, but Colin and Samir are some YouTubers that
Nice.
are
Okay.
totally creator economy focus. Like they focus on the business side, but they have, when Mr. Beast did the Beast Burger thing, they also followed him around for 24 hours, like the whole launch.
Okay, cool.
So,
Mhm.
so they have access to really interesting insights in the creator space, and consuming enough of them will get you like, it'll get you the 80% of the information. So when you join a creator economy startup, you can be like, I don't remember hearing about this problem. Like,
Mhm.
why are we doing this? Yeah,
Yeah, makes sense. Oh, cool. Okay, I haven't personally checked them out, but I will after this call. Yep.
should super high quality content. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, awesome. But thank you so much, Avery, for your time. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and I'm just super proud of where you are and how you've grown this whole thing since the time we met to where you are now. It's just amazing to see what you're doing.
And IU, no one could ever doubt you, but it's always exceptional what you bring to the table. So pretty cool.